my very first YouTube video, I put together something that was less than 2 minutes long of me just using this drill-powered scroll saw. Now, Izzy Swan had designed this, and he made a fairly quick video himself of throwing it together and then using it. And I was quite taken with that, and I was happy that he had made some drawings of that device. And I got on his website and I paid him for those. And so I put this together, and it was fairly complicated because there were no assembly instructions, but they were mechanical drawings. But I figured it out and I got it together, and it works. It's a lot of fun to use. But I've gotten a million requests for more information about this. It's clearly the most popular video I've put out to date. And when I look on Izzy's site, it's generated an incredible amount of enthusiasm for views for him as well. However, he took the plans off from his site, and even with me asking him twice to put them back up, he's lost interest in them for reasons that are beyond me. And I finally decided that it would be beneficial if I indeed put a couple of videos together of me assembling this, giving some dimensions, and hopefully making it possible for those of you who are that interested to be able to actually put it together from simply watching videos. That means I'm going to have several pieces put together. They're not going to be 10 minutes long by any means. It's going to be very instructional on why this is built the way it is, and I've got a couple of modifications that I think would be appropriate because in the course of things when Izzy designed it, he changed a couple of things, but there were some details about it that don't need to be the way they are, and they could be simplified. So that's what's going to happen over the course of, we'll see how long it takes me to do it. Let's get this started. I'll take this apart and then I'll turn the camera back on. Now, what I failed to mention in my opening comments was that I consider the plans to this to be Izzy Swan's intellectual property, and therefore not mine to either give away or sell. And I was concerned enough about this to contact him and tell him what I had wanted to do, and he was very encouraging and said, by all means, go ahead and do it. So he's gone on to working with drill-powered dinosaurs, and he's having a great time designing and implementing certain things, and he's already stated that he is not going to be bringing out any plans for that dinosaur. So he's going to go on to something new and surprise us all. So in this piece, what I'm trying to do is just get some close-ups of the details of the saw, and I think that that will be fairly instructive for a lot of folks because they'll look at these details and know immediately what's happening. And we will continue on. I've pulled all the parts of my scroll saw apart. Well, not all of them. I have some assemblies that I've left. And I've laid them out, and it's a bit of a jumble. And there you can see that there are actually a lot of parts associated with this. But the assembly is actually, it starts with the base, and it goes to the supports, which are these assemblies, and that is the main back brace to keep everything solidly in place so that it doesn't wobble around. This is the brace that's going to keep the arms oriented properly, and it's got a couple of features that you want to be fairly close in tolerance here so that there's no wobble. And you can also see that up on top it's going to help to avoid any wobbling this way, so it's very solidly in place. It's pretty nice structure, pretty basic. Tolerances are pretty close, so you want to pay attention to that. This goes on the back of that once this is in place, and it covers up a bunch of things, but it's just a stiffener. This piece keeps the working plate in place, and it's got a pivot point so that it can go 45 degrees. This is the trunnion support plate. All of the drive pieces, the reciprocating arms, and the working plate with the trunnion on them. And basically what I've just done is tell you the order of assembly. Now I've pulled all the parts apart, and I had said originally that I was going to just put it back together again and describe the process. But in pulling the thing apart, I've discovered an error in the drivetrain, and it explains a lot of some of the problems that I've been having, because there's a little bit of a hitch as every time it goes through a revolution. And what you see here is the axis of the drivetrain. And if you put this together properly, and this is the main support of the drivetrain, and everything is oriented according to how this is placed on the board. And you can see that I actually have center lines on both sides the way it's supposed to be, lining right up and making it absolutely square so that all of the axles will be exactly where they need to be. However, if you look very closely at the tracing of where it actually was, you can see that it was skewed, and skewed by a fair amount. And because I've got too many holes drilled in here, and the difference being here's where it should be and here's where it ended up at this side, I'm gonna make a new board, a new baseboard, since this defines a great deal of what this scroll saw is. Rather than try to fill those holes up and recenter it, I think that's going to be much easier for me to actually make a new one of these, lay it out properly, and then make absolutely sure that I line this up correctly, and then mine will work just as flawlessly as Izzy's did, running at high speed. I could never run mine as high as he seemed to be running his. So that's a little fly in the ointment, but it's in fact going to bring me up to speed with where I ought to be with this. Okay, I've cut a new piece of what is called in the U.S. a 3/4 inch Baltic birch plywood, and almost without exception this scroll saw is made with this 3/4 inch Baltic birch plywood, which is in fact 23/32, or just about exactly 18 millimeters. So because it isn't exactly 3/4 inches, it's a good idea to make things and fit them as you go along. And I'm fairly slavishly following the plans, although I don't think that it's really necessary. This is 28 1/8 inches long, or 71.4 centimeters. It's 12 inches wide, or 30.4 centimeters. And I'm not going to do anything with this right now because I think it's important to build a couple of these support assemblies. So I'm going to put this away for just a second for the purpose of explaining my reasoning on this. This is the main stiffener support, and there's going to be another piece of plywood that attaches back here, but I think it's a good idea to manufacture this and then trace it onto the base, and then do some drilling for the screws in that circumstance. Now, this back piece is 8.5 inches wide, and that translates into 21.6 centimeters. And it's 6 inches deep, or 15.2 centimeters. And the sides are the same, 6 inches, and they're 15.25 inches long, and I don't believe that you need to be slavish about that. 38.8 centimeters. This looks pretty cool. It's not necessary, but it's alright to be nice looking while you're doing this. And once you've got that put together, and it's got lots of screws, in fact there's no glue whatsoever on this scroll saw, and I think as long as you're looking ahead and not considering pulling it apart, you don't need to use nearly as many screws as Izzy has done. But I'm going to put it back together again the same way, since I've got all the holes manufactured. Once you've got this, then you want to center it in this direction. You want to back it right up, and then trace the outline, which I've already done. So now I know that I'm going to be putting lots of screws in along the way, and I will countersink them on the bottom, and then I will glue that in place, or I will screw and glue that in place, and then we'll make the next assembly, and the next assembly will be the support for the saw arms. Okay, here you can see that I've actually screwed the stiffener into place, and there is the screwing pattern. There's considerable effort into keeping the back of this in place so that as it pulls from this side it doesn't want to pull up. But it's got a lot of screws in it, and they're all 1.25 inch coarse drywall screws. Okay, the next assembly to work on is the saw arm holder and stiffener assembly. And that's the top view of it. There's a side view of it. And that's what the bottom looks like. And this is a fairly important piece because this dimension right here it has to exactly measure what your arms are going to be, and in this case it's 1 inch. So this piece has to exactly equal the same width as the saw arms. And I've got a spacer here that's actually just floating. Once it's all put together, having that floating piece isn't required, but it just happened to remain with me. This whole system is 17.25 inches tall, or it's 43.8 centimeters. As I say, this internal dimension is 1 inch, or 2.54 centimeters. And then we've got just the width of the plywood that makes up the other dimensions. If you want to, and it's probably a pretty good idea because it tends to give you a little more space for working area, this dimension is just 1.5 inches, or roughly 4 centimeters. The dimension across the cut is 8.75 inches, or roughly 22 centimeters. And its depth is from this surface here to this surface here is 2 inches, or about 5 centimeters. And this dimension
here to here is 7 inches. It's actually 7 1/32 on the drawing, but 7 inches would be okay. And then you can just use some freehand method and put that curve in there, and then you've got it. Now, I'll get to this in a bit, but these holes are very important. And they must line up because these are the holes that are going to define the action of the arms. So they happen after this whole thing is put together, and it's really important to put those in square. So I would suggest that it just has to be done on a drill press. This actually isn't nearly as important because it's just the anchor point for the spring. So that's neither here nor there. It can be a little bit crooked. These are through holes, and this is threaded, and that's the bolt that goes in there, and it's just threaded into the wood. And I know that a lot of people don't have taps, but I prefer to use taps to go into the wood. I have seen people actually take a similar bolt to the one they want to use, and they'll file an edge in there, and they'll use that as a way of tapping into the wood. And if that's all you got, it's acceptable, I guess. I know a lot of people need to do that. So, oh, I forgot to give that dimension, didn't I? This whole piece is 4 inches wide, and that defines that and that dimension. And 4 inches is 10.2 centimeters. So I would suggest that it's important for you to put this piece together. Make sure that you've got this dimension properly done. Put it together with screws, and I think glue is a good idea. These stiffeners go on with glue, so those are going to take a little while to get into place. And these stiffeners, those are 1.5 inches, which is 3.7 centimeters. So glue those in place. Put that spacer in, defined with this spacer, and make sure you get them pretty nice and lined up so they're flat and even. And then once all of that glue and the screws from the two sides, once all that's set up, then you're going to want to put 1/4 inch holes straight through, and that is, what are we defining here? This one is 3/4 of an inch down from the top, which is 2 centimeters. This one is 9 5/8 down from the top, and 9 5/8 is 24.7 centimeters. And you want to get those pretty nicely centered up. This one doesn't matter so much. That bolt is located at 7.5 inches or 19 centimeters.